All right, well, welcome back. Since I didn't get a chance to talk to you about Chapter 3, today's video is going to include Chapter 3 and Chapter 4. I'm sorry, Chapter 2. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3. So today's video will include Chapter 2 and Chapter 3. Um, and I also wanted to, in your quiz, you may have a few questions from Chapter 2 roll over in there from this video. So let's talk about it for a minute. Um, why do criminals commit crime? Why do they offend? I guess is the theme of chapter 2. Obviously, that's a question that we all ask ourselves. It's what everybody wants to know. But why do they do it? Um, some people equate it to leadership. They say that leadership is developed. That no child is ever born a leader. No doctor ever delivers a baby and holds the baby up and says, "Well, we have ourselves a leader here." You know, where some people say, "No, leadership is definitely born into people." Kings and rulers have leader children, and it's just in the bloodline. So that's some of the discussion. My professors called it life course criminality, and what they mean by that is at what point in time, we first have to decide at what point in time do we determine that someone is a criminal. Is the 2-year-old that says no to their mom a criminal? Is the 4-year-old that puts a piece of candy from the store in their pocket a criminal? Is the 15-year-old that smokes marijuana a criminal? Is an 18-year-old that drinks alcohol a criminal? Well, those are all criminal behaviors. Those are all things that those are all crimes that have been committed. But I don't know necessarily that we would label those people as a criminal, and that's where the life course criminality comes into place. Are the decisions that they're making throughout their life course those of a criminal nature? I mean, studies will show us that almost all teenagers commit a crime or two before their adult years, and that they almost, in a way, grow out of that. In fact, what we find is that many times, even what might be considered a life course criminal initially, someone who has heavy criminal involvement, by mid-20s stops. And when reviewing why do they stop, we see things like I have a family now. I have a job now. I don't need to steal. Those kinds of things come into play. So those are things that we got to think about. So then the next question I have for you is, how about things like boot camp? Do programs like boot camps work? They were a huge rage a few years ago. I mean, everybody was running a boot camp, and I've been involved in programs similar to a boot camp. And so, do they work? Is the question. Um, Here's what studies show. In general, studies are going to say boot camps do not work. Because what is happening is an immediate change in behavior and a demand for that change, and then a release back into society from a very, very, very structured environment where you have a drill sergeant or a commander over you guiding your every step, and then entrance into a society where there's no one doing that. Parents aren't strong. There's no guidance there, and so traditionally boot camps fail. Traditionally in traditional studies. Now, where I personally would support a boot camp environment would be where the boot camp is followed up immediately by probation officers. In fact, as the probation officers are part of that boot camp, and so that structured environment is continued by the probation officers to help reinforce that change. But here's what it comes down to. Are we trying to simply change behavior, or are we trying to change the thought process of an individual? Am I trying to say, don't break into that bank because you know you're going to get in trouble and you won't like going to prison? Or am I trying to get that person to think, don't break into that bank because it's the wrong thing to do? Okay, and that's where things kind of get dicey in the criminology world. to where we try to, what are we trying to accomplish here? Well, if they don't break into the bank, either way, we won, right? But that's where people start outweighing cost and consequences. Well, if I didn't change their thought process, I only changed their behavior to be able to recognize if I break into the bank, I'm going to suffer these consequences. Well, then one day the consequences will outweigh the risk, and they'll say, "Well, no, I will break into the bank because the consequences outweigh the risk," and so that's what they'll do. So that's what we got to be careful of, and that's what we got to understand. What's our goal? What if you're going into counseling? What's your goal as a counselor? Is it to simply change the behavior, or is it to change the thought pattern? And you got to think about that. Interesting things about life course offenders, people that are life course criminals. One interesting thing is that they found that the majority of our life course criminals have lower resting heart rates. What does that mean, man? Well, maybe that assists us in that decision-making process that where you and I, when we go to steal the candy bar, our hands are sweating, we're visibly nervous, our eyes are darting all over the place, but this person has a little bit lower resting heart rate. It's harder to easily excite them. So that might be an indication. And something else that they find is that there's very high activity in the portion of the brain that seeks, that makes, I call it animal instinct decisions or impulse decisions. Whereas a portion of your brain that makes your rational decisions isn't there. It isn't as active as a normal person. So some of those things to think about when you're thinking about this. So then we get into some theories. We get into the biological theory. And this theory is basically, I call it the genetic theory. This theory is the theory that they were born this way. They were born a criminal. That the traits inherited in them are passed down through the family, and that's just how it is. Some interesting things about that. Some interesting things to think about that. One would be, if this theory is accurate, then how can we have two identical twins who are raised in separate homes, and one become a criminal and one not, if it's biological? Okay. But with that said, I can also tell you, working in the prison system, see a lot of families that come in that on visitation day, it's like a reunion with you and the visitor, because you've had them arrested so many times and you've personally locked them up so many times that you know them very well, and they're coming to visit their son who's now locked up. So I mean, there's some support behind that biological theory. So I want to throw it out to you. It's something that people are thinking about, but you got to think about reasons why it would and wouldn't work. It's a theory. Biochemical theory, interesting one. That one talks about glands and the amount of dopamine that's released, and that kind of thing, and dopamine being like a reward chemical, and so that's an interesting theory. Well, hang on. We'll stop this video here, and we'll pick up on the next one. We'll talk a little bit about it.